Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good day to all of you, my dear students. I welcome you to the 14th lecture of report writing skills. So far, we have started with the report writing, then gradually moved towards technical writing, then came up with the writing process, and gradually and steadily now we have started to discuss the 7 C's of effective communication, through which you're going to make your writing and your communication more effective. So if we talk about the C's, which we have covered in our previous lecture, alongside the basic introduction of what the basic 7 C's of communication are, we have talked in detail about clarity, conciseness, and completeness. And we have shown the manner in which these C's are interrelated to one another and also related and linked with the other C's of communication as well. The purpose of telling that information was to show you that these C's of communication are overlapping, interlinked, and are always needed together to make communication more effective. So if we talk about clarity, conciseness, and completeness, of course they will go alongside the other C's that we will be discussing in our today's lecture. Starting, of course, from concreteness. So what basically the word concrete tells you? Of course, it's telling you that it is basically related to mentioning and providing the specifics within your information. Rather than being more generic or general, you have to keep your information provided within the content shared with the audience and the readers more specific. And what do we mean by this specific? Will be coming ahead in the points that we'll be discussing within the C of concreteness. First, regarding the links and the connections, so it's basically connected with the C of clarity, conciseness, and consideration. Clarity, of course, if you are making things more specific for your readers, that means that you are making your content more clear. Then, of course, when you are providing specific information, of course you are developing this link with conciseness as well, because if you are telling things in a concise form, that means that rather than talking about things in general, you're trying to talk about them in particular. So another connection which you can find. And of course, you try to provide that specific information which is actually required for your audience and for your readers. And that's why you are considering the nature of the audience as well. So that is how you find the connection between this C and the other C's as mentioned in the first bullet. What do we mean when it comes to concreteness and how you can develop this within your information? It all begins with the interpretation of facts and figures. Facts and figures itself are not the ultimate goal when we talk about concreteness, but of course, facts and figures should come alongside their interpretation. Because of course, as we have discussed in our previous lectures as well, that there are different categories of your readers. The nature of audience also varies from situation to situation, and that is how the interpretation of these facts and figures will also go in line with these figures and facts themselves. Then the manner in which you can create this concreteness is by avoiding the use of vague words, particularly those with multiple meanings. As you can see within the slides as well, several, multiple, quickly. These are the words which are giving you a part of an information. But of course, you have to get an idea on your own. There are several things in the room. Several. What do we mean by this several? What are you exactly pointing out when you are saying the word several? There are multiple tasks which are required, which were performed by me last weekend. Like what? Again, you are simply giving a general statement rather than being more specific. So that is the difference between a general and a specific information. Doing things quickly, or you have to do this quickly. How quick? Can you please specify what do you mean when you are saying this word of quickly? So you're getting the idea that although these words are part of communication, but they are more oriented towards the general provision of information. But when we mean specific, then of course these words are not going to convey the meaning that you need when you want to develop concreteness within the information. Another thing which is very important when it comes to concreteness is the citation of your sources and in an appropriate manner. Because if you are citing sources and not giving them in the appropriate manner, of course it will become an example of plagiarism, and which is strictly prohibited and has to be avoided by all means. So your citation has to be appropriate, and of course it has to be done to make your content more concrete. Then if we talk about the next bullet, you have to provide numerical data within the sentence construction as well, because this numerical data will become the example of concreteness. You're not saying things in general by the use or the application of vague words. Rather, you are providing facts and specifics, and numerical data is an ideal example of those facts. And that's why it has to be there. And when it goes alongside the citation of sources, so you have an example in front of you that according to A and B, then you have this year that in which they have said this information, so 60% of the students, and so on and so forth. There is some information which is coming ahead, could be any, but that is the manner in which you have to provide the data with specifics, citing the sources and then providing the information with numerical data. This is one important aspect when we talk about developing concreteness within your content. If we move ahead, this point has to be kept in mind as well. You have to avoid letting the readers deduce the meaning to avoid misinterpretation. You have to provide all the specifics so that the readers can clearly get an idea of what you want to convey to your readers or your audience. But if you try to make your writing more literary, rhetorical, as we have in creative writing or literary writing, so what the writers are actually doing, they're coming up with these literary devices, symbolism and imagery and all the other devices which are used within a literary form of writing, just to make it more aesthetic, artistic. And the other thing, of course, is developing multiple interpretation, paving the way for multiple interpretations, and the readers can simply draw out and extract multiple meanings, which is not the ultimate goal when we talk about technical communication in journal. So this thing has to be avoided as well when it comes to developing concreteness within your information, that you have to provide specific information, that particular information, by avoiding the use of vague words, by all means using the numerical data with statistics, of course, and that is how you'll keep them on track. They won't have to deduce or infer any information or meaning out of the text provided to them. They'll have everything on the page provided to them. And that is how there will be minimum chance of misinterpretation. Another thing to note is the use of donatives. For example, the kind of expressions which are direct, very explicit and dictionary based words rather than the words which are connotative. And connotative words are the ones which are with some associated ideas and notions. Again, the example comes of those literary devices, the manner in which the words are symbolic in nature, or they simply give meaning which is associated with another object. You can think of the similes and metaphors in which one thing is related to another in a manner as good as, or it is like that, and you simply, in case of a metaphor, call one thing another. Like a lion is coming, so not as brave as a lion, which becomes a simile, you call that person as a lion, becomes a metaphor. So these things are connotative, and these create confusion when it comes to their use within technical communication. And that is why these connotative expressions have to be avoided, and rather you have to use these donatives, direct, very explicit, and those expressions which have dictionary based definitions and meanings. Then of course you have to keep this point in mind as well, that prefer action verbs rather than nouns. You need to perform and focus on the action rather than just providing the details of subjects. So rather than nouns coming within your statements, within your sentences, of course the important subject matter has to be shared, but still focus on the basic action being performed, because that action is going to develop concreteness within your information, because you are providing that specific information, that what actually is happening, what actually was the outcome, and these are all performed and reflected by the use of action verbs. You reflect an action being performed within your sentence to make your content and information more lively. Vivid image building words. Now this one also creates a sort of confusion, because it's more or less related to, once again, that imagery which is part of literature or literary writing, confused sometimes with the manner in which you use literary devices to create imagination and far-fetched imaginations, conceits within the minds of your readers. Well, that is not the objective when we talk about the technical communication and using the 7 C's of effective communication. You have to use very clear, very concrete and image building words to convey your message which is there within your mind. Develop it in the same manner in which you have it within your mind, within the minds of your readers. And for that, the example gives you a very good explanation of how you can do it. For example, you say that this letter is long. So long is just telling you in the form of an adjective that something has some length. But of course, you will only get a picture if you have some specifics. For example, this letter is 3 times as long as you said it would be. So for example, 3 times as long as you said. So this information is already conveyed to them, some standard is already been mentioned, and then now with reference to that information, now this subject or the basic writer of this sentence is saying that this letter is 3 times long compared to the one told. So there is a reference point, and with respect to that reference, then you are giving this comparison, and the reader now is in a position to develop this image within the mind. This is basically the purpose. Like I have this another example. This guy is tall, or this guy is 6 feet tall. So saying this tall and saying this 6 feet tall is making it more specific. Now your image which is developed within your mind would be quite clear compared to the one which is developed earlier. So this is how you have to use these vivid image building words. for developing concreteness within your content. This is also very important when we talk about concreteness. Of course, one way or another, it is related. Avoid the impossible and focus on the possibility, because there are statements that I read, there are statements where you are also quite familiar with the statements in which you are told that this thing is not possible after this time, or this thing cannot be done after this deadline. So saying it in this manner, where you are saying impossible, is going to develop a very negative image within the mind of your readers. It is going to weaken, lessen, or even affect in a very bad manner the relationship which is there between you and your readers. Rather than saying this, there is a manner of replacing it with some other alternative in which you give them a possibility which can be achieved, which can be done. So rather than saying that this thing is impossible after 5, you can say this thing is possible before 5 and it can be done. So you can simply change the language from negative to positive by turning this impossibility into a possibility, to develop and strengthen strong relationship and making your content information more concrete. So that is how you have to avoid it. Provide the specifics and then try to turn that impossibility into a possibility. So that is how it's also related with this concept of concreteness. Again, you can get a good idea by using the active voice at positive situation, highlighting your own importance as well, or the importance of the subject as well, for performing an action when it has a positive impact on your readers. So if there is some good news to share, if there is something positive which has to be shared with your audience, with your readers, so the preference should be there for the active voice. And you would be able to understand it from the second bullet, that you have to use passive voice at a negative situation. If there is something negative, so instead of relating it with yourself, with the subject matter, just highlight the problem itself at the first place, and that is how you need the sentence construction within a passive voice, because passive voice is going to place that object in the forefront and the subject matter, or the subject which is basically performing the action, which would go at a side. So highlight the problem first in case of a negative situation. But if there is a solution, then the good tactic is try to develop, strengthen the relationship between you and your readers by using the active voice. The examples themselves would give you a very good idea as well to connect things with one another. Then of course, this detail is very much important, that capture the attention of the audience. So just keep in mind the nature, the level, the knowledge and background of your audience, and once you are aware of it, then structure your content accordingly to how much extent is information required to make my text more concrete, how many specifics are needed, how many facts and figures are required, to how much extent should I interpret this data so that the audience is able to understand the provided information. You will be the one to decide how it has to be structured, how much detail is required to strengthen the link, to develop concreteness in the long run within your content. Particularly useful for marketing or advertising campaigns. So this one also gives you a very good picture, the manner in which you see the introduction or the advertisement or the publicity of different products which are shared on daily basis or weekly basis. You see them on social media, you see them in the form of brochures, you see them on TV, but look at the manner in which you get the details of that subject, basically, which is the focal point of a discussion. So you get some concrete specific details with respect to its operation, the manner in which it can be useful, the manner in which it can be significant. So you try to find, you simply can find all the specifics, the significant features of that subject, of that focus point in front of you. And that is how you have to structure your writing, by providing concrete information in front of your readers. So this will be very useful as it is applied in case of your marketing and advertising campaigns. A good example, there were examples that I discussed just minutes back, but if you look at this one regarding the vague use and the specific, concrete and precise use of words, more or less related with the same idea. It's regarding the GMAT, which is basically a test of assessment, and its scores are being discussed over here within the two statements. One is a bit vague and the other is more concrete. Student GMAT scores are higher. How much higher compared to what? We are not getting any reference point, but over here you are getting clear detail of in 1996 the GMAT scores averaged 600. By 1997 they had risen to 610. You have a comparison between 2 years and two figures which can be related, which can be compared. So basically you have a reference point. If you make 1996 as a reference point, so with a reference to 1996 there is an improvement of marks in the year 1997. You're providing figures, you're providing facts, you are interpreting them, and that is basically the purpose of concreteness. That is how you develop it within your writing. Discussing some other example, now you will see a comparison of a bad and a good example, the manner in which we have shared it with some previous series of communication as well. Just look at the statement. Hilltop Resort is the best resort. Do come to us on your next holiday. And that is it. So the question arises, is the best resort, okay, how? What's so special about it? Do come to us on your next holiday. Why should we come? And that is why I've written it as well for you, that these are the issues. How is it the best? Can you give any proof? Why should we come, or what's so special about it? These are the things missing, which is why I can say that this statement is basically missing concreteness. You are saying best, how, and why should we listen to this call of yours that do come to us on your next holiday? What's so special? And now if you look at this good example by the application of concreteness, Hilltop Resort is the jewel of Western Hills. Okay, we have a quality. Take a break from your work, escape from life's chaos and stress, relax and rejuvenate yourself at Hilltop. Go back fresh and energized. Again, a reference point. Again, you're getting this comparison with your day-to-day professional life, and for that you require a break. Once you will take a break, you return back, you will be so fresh, you will be so energized. So again, there are some specifics. Again, they are providing an information in a manner which is detailed again for the audience to understand. Compared to the one which was there previously, there is more detail for the audience to understand, be it the lay audience, because we have all sorts of audience, and that is all. This information has been structured, making it more good for you to understand. You have some visualizing details, and you get comparison being provided between two situations. Now look at this one. The lunchbox wizard will save you time every day. First of all, even if you look at this term, if I would call it as a noun, so this noun is so confusing itself that you're not getting any idea at all that how is it going to save my time on every day, what this thing is. A car, or is it some motorbike? What is this basically thing? But one way or another is related to a lunch for a lunch box. So it's more or less has to do with my meal. So the minds or the points which are coming with your mind would be that how is it going to save my time? What is so special about it? And why should we care? What's in it? What basically this thing is? But to relate it with your day-to-day life, you develop concreteness and you get a structure of this form, that how much time you will find once again that element of comparison. How much time do you spend every day picking your kids' lunches? You are given a situation. No more. Just take a complete lunchbox visit from your refrigerator each day to give your kids a healthy lunch and have more time to play or read with them. So once again, it has highlighted the quality of time saving. It has turned out to be something that you place within a refrigerator, a wizard which is going to provide you lunch for your kids and in an efficient manner so that you can spend more time. So again, getting a vivid image which you can develop by the explanation being provided to you. You are getting a comparison between two states, the one in which you are and the one in which you will go as a result of this wizard. And based on this argumentation or the manner in which the points have been provided to you, the idea seems to a good extent practicable. And that's why you can do a lot when you develop concreteness within your content. These were some good examples. You can find many more as well. Follow the links. You can see the manner in which the content can be transformed by the application of concreteness, making it more vivid, more clear. So you see this relation between one C and the other C. So every C is almost more or less related with the other C's of communication as well, and that is why these are to be applied together to get a perfect content. Now even over here I have an interesting task for you as well, and the reason why I'm calling it interesting is that sentences seems okay, there is no issue, there is no problem. There is one problem, and that is that these sentences are too generic, too general. By the use of vague words, by looking at them, I've highlighted them, made them bold as well for you, that our product has won several prizes. Our product. So over here you're getting a space to fill it up with some concrete words. These brakes stop a car within a short distance. Like I have ABS within my own automobile. There are many other forms, so you can fill it with the form of brake that you have within your car, or even you can search for it in case you don't. That is not an issue. Tests were made by us. Specify who you are and in what position you have made these tests. A full report will be sent to you by the supervisor. Who is the supervisor? Oh, Mr. Singh will give consideration to the report. This one has the person's name, everything. Over here I have highlighted this will give consideration. Why the use of will give consideration when you can simply use the active verb of Mr. Singh will consider the report, will give consideration to the report. This is the point which was referred back in the previous slide. Rather than nouns as you have in consideration, turn it into an active verb so that the sentence looks lively and looks concrete and information being provided in the form of an action. This is the purpose, and that is how you have to change it. So there is one which I have done for you, but for the rest that is your task, to simply change these into concrete sentences. I have given you the hints, just give it a try. Unable to understand, just rewind it, just go back, and I have given some clues. Look into them, try to understand, try to apply it, and then move ahead. And with this, we can place this stamp of completed over the fourth C of communication, and we can move towards the next C, which is of correctness. So if we talk about this correctness, Correctness is again referring to the quality of being correct. But how can we look into the detail of how to develop this correctness when we talk about the 7 C's of communication? So you basically make your content clear by providing factual information with grammatical precision. So both things are to a very good extent interrelated, because the factual information itself without this precision will simply make it more confusing for your audience. And secondly, even if you remove this factual information, the grammatical content itself would keep it incomplete, as a result of which your readers would ask for more information. And that is something which has to be avoided once again in case of your effective communication. So you provide factual information with grammatical precision, and that is how you develop correctness within your content. This is basically the link and the connection of correctness with consideration. So you can only develop correctness if you consider the nature of your audience, their background, their concerns, their expectations, everything, if it is there within your mind. And if you structure your content accordingly, only then you are developing correctness within your content. That's why you can see the link between these 2 C's of communication. Once again, the importance of avoiding all the grammatical errors. This one is also very much important, that the space for doing an error is not allowed, especially for developing this correctness. If you are making the errors, this C will vanish, and which will hamper your overall impact of the content towards the audience and your readers. So you have to simply revert back, think of all the writing process that I have explained to you. You have learned it gradually. Think of all the techniques which we have learned. There are so many techniques, especially within the finishing stage, the post-writing stage. That is how it becomes important. Now you can realize how these things are related, how we are moving step by step, making you a perfect individual who knows how to simply use and get a good command over the technical communication. So link these things together and then apply them to come up with the very perfect content. So you have to avoid all the grammatical errors by, of course, using the post-writing techniques, and then just look into this point: exact, correct, and very well-timed message. You should know which information should come at what specific point, and if it is well-timed, one point has been explained, and then the second point, which is related to the first point, is coming after point number 1, means that you are moving in a logical sequence, and that is how it is well-timed communication, well-timed message. Everything is coming exactly at the point where it should be. That means it's correct. Again, valid, reliable, and credible sources. So your sources would be reliable if their results, after performing that experiment on the basis of which they have found those results, if they are giving similar results, that means that their data itself and the authors, the researchers themselves, are reliable, and their content, their information can be cited. So you can, of course, use these sources who are valid and themselves and reliable, and they are credible, authentic. So you have to avoid all the unreliable sources for scientific publication, in which there is always a chance of the information which is not valid, which are missing these points of reliability, validity, and credibility. So all these sources in which these 3 points, these qualities, these characteristics are missing, are to be avoided. So there are examples. You are well aware of all the forums in which very authentic research papers are available, the research being provided to you by different authors. So you have to basically use their data which is genuine, which is authentic, and that is something which you can cite within your own content as well to make it correct. That's why I've written it, that it is fundamental in case of writing a research paper, that you have to simply include these references of the credible sources in case of writing a research paper. Otherwise it won't be considered as a research, because you are not moving in that cyclical process of carrying out research in which their references, their citation and their study is needed. So to make it correct, with reference to carrying out a research, you need the references of these valid, reliable and credible sources to support your own claims with results. So that is why you require, and that is why you need these references, and that is how you can make and develop correctness within your content. Now let's move onwards to the next slide, and I want you to give special attention, as written within the bullet itself, special caution in case of extreme workload. Why? Because when you know that you are involved, you are basically having a very long to-do list, and there are multiple tasks which are required to be performed within the specified working hours. You try to do things in a very haphazard manner, you're doing things very quickly, and this pace, this speed gives rise and paves the way for making some errors, lapses and grammatical mistakes, which become part of the written content that you develop within an office environment. As I mentioned earlier, that you have to come up with some written content which is required, which is needed, be it in the form of an email, but there's a big chance, if you're short of time, typing the email in a very quick manner, so you can do and you can miss many things. And that is how this thing becomes important, that you need to ensure that, especially in case of an extreme workload, ensure to cross-check that content that you're developing. There may be a chance that you miss out very minor errors that you are going to just see in the upcoming example after the points that I discussed with you. Proper grammar, check the grammar, check for the punctuation and spelling. As we used to proofread in the previous lecture, we had some examples, we used some symbols to point out where these things are missing and how it can be rectified. So go through that technique of proofreading to identify the errors and to remove them within your final draft. Using the right level of language. Right level means, depending upon the nature of the audience, you determine whether to go for the formal or the informal choice of words. I will share the examples. And then you require the accuracy of facts, figures and words. Accuracy means having another person read and comment on the validity of the material. You may be thinking that this thing is valid or reliable, whereas the other person, once reading the content, may find out that some further studies have proven this point wrong and they have turned out to be more authentic. Therefore, this point requires rectification and a change, no longer being reliable. That is why this accuracy of facts, figures and words becomes significant and has to be ensured, has to be applied to develop correctness within your content. If we look at those levels of language that I just mentioned a minute back, so you can just see these are the alternatives for one another, depending upon the nature of the audience that you have. So you can use participate or join, you can go for procuring or getting, endeavor or try. So it depends on what your audience can understand. After all, you are the sender, but they are the ultimate receivers of your information. And if you are not using the right choice of words, you are not making that right choice, again the feedback would come for clarification and further explanation. And would you like it? So that is why you basically ensure that use right level of language depending upon the nature of the audience. Now there is an example for you where Mr. Abdullah is addressing Ms. Saima. Dear Saima, further to our conservation today, I am attaching the plan for the first stage of the project. Hope the 1 week deadline is okay with you and your team. Regards, Abdullah. So the reason why this example becomes bad is that from the appearance, the structure, the choice of words, everything is okay, but I want you to focus on line number 1 in this word and line number 2 over here in this word. If you have a computer spell check, that also say very nicely spelled, all things okay, no issue, because this is a word and it means something. You talk about conservation, that means okay as well. But if you talk about vocabulary in context, it will tell you something is wrong, something is not right. I guess the writer meant to write conversation rather than conservation. So further to our conservation today would have a very different meaning compared to conversation. And hope the 1 week deadline, that the deadline is week, or 1 WEEK deadline would have a very different meaning. And these are so minor errors that when these were not visible, so even I could have missed it. And I can say the same for you. And this has to be ensured. This is what reading it carefully, ensuring the presence of correctness demands. This is what proofreading demands as well. And that is why these techniques are developed and used. You have seen the difference. And with this, we can place a stamp of completion over the C of correctness as well. And now we can move onwards towards the C of consideration. Looking at the word itself, you basically consider through your writing. But what do you consider? You basically consider the nature, the expectations, the desires, the ideas, the background knowledge, expectations, anticipations of your audience. That these are to be fulfilled. These needs are to be met through my writing, and this is basically ensured within your writing by the application of consideration. How do you do it in writing is something that is a skill, and that is something which we are going to understand by moving and going through these slides. This is the first point to be focused, that you basically have to step into the shoes of others, or to interpret it in another way, you have to just suppose that you have to look at your own self. For example, if I have to look at my own self, so basically how can I look at myself from the eyes of the students, from the eyes of my viewer, and that is how I have to fulfill the needs. That is how you basically apply the technique of consideration. You place yourself at the place of the other person, and then by placing yourself over there, then you have to ask yourself some questions, that what do I expect from myself if I am at the side of the other person? So whatsoever comes within your mind has to be ensured by returning back to your own place, and then you know what the other person is expecting, desiring, or simply having in mind, and then try to answer all those queries, those answers, those demands and desires. And that is you basically do through this C of consideration, by stepping into the shoes of the others. Now its connection with the principle of correctness, because of course, as I mentioned earlier, when you consider the nature of the other person, you know what they desire, what do they expect, and then you are providing the right kind of information, meaning that you are providing the correct information. So that is how these two C's are getting linked up. What you do basically is you consider the expectations of the audience, but not just restrict to the expectations. You try to meet those expectations as well, and that is how you develop this C, or to make your communication more effective. You provide a visual design alongside a good use of language. So design has to be visual, which can be, if I say it in the same way, visualized by your audience. They can simply visualize the information which is being provided to them, because you have considered their nature, their level of comprehension, and based on that level, once you have understood it, now you are writing that information so that they can perceive and conceive as well, if you want them to conceive some idea as well. So that is how you structure it, and it demands a good use of language as well. What do we mean by good use of language? So you basically make the content comprehensible and appealing. It should be appealing, that they should say it from the inside that this thing is making sense and it has to be applied, it has to be accepted, which means that it really was appealing. If they are taking an action, that means that you have made a difference. You have achieved the target of changing or affecting their perspective, if that was your ultimate goal, but you have done it, and that is basically by the use of good language and helping them visualizing it through writing. Maintaining audience self-respect, a very important point. You need to ensure that this self-esteem, this self-respect, this dignity of a person is not affected with your writing. Even if you have to teach them something, teach them in a manner that their own respect is not affected, and they take that information in journal, that it is for us in journal rather than for someone particular. No, that is to be avoided. Keep things in journal, discuss them for general audience, so that they all may think, okay, it's for us all, not for me for committing that specific crime. No, keep yourself and your language journal, not to affect their self-respect. No harm to their emotion. Again, these two are very much related. Affecting their self-respect means you're making them more emotional, and certainly there are certain things within our convention, within our norms, which should be respected, and if these are affected in case of a cultural clash, that can create a lot of trouble in the overall comprehension of your content. That is why ensure self-respect of norms, traditions, customs, because that is how you're going to develop this sea of consideration. You're considering your audience. You know to whom you are talking, to whom you are addressing, to whom you are writing, and you structure your writing accordingly so that it may not be taken in a negative sense. This is also a very good technique to develop this connection between you, yourself, and your audience. This is called as the you attitude. The attitude or the technique or the approach of using this second person, you. The use of this word you within your sentence means that despite being the one writing or the addressing or speaking, you are giving a very good space to the person who is being addressed, who is the addressee, who is the reader or the listener, viewer of the provided information. So when you say you, as I even talk to you, so I know that basically I have to apply all these C's to make my communication more effective and to involve you within this overall learning process. That is how this thing becomes important. Ensuring to involve your audience and your readers within this process of comprehension and development of content is something that you do by the application of you attitude. You'll get these sad emoticons on other people's faces by coming up with these expressions such as we'll be extending our hours to make shopping more convenient, because again you are just keeping things authoritative by saying we'll do this, but just shifting it and saying it as you'll be able to shop evenings with the extended hours means this thing is being done for you. You are the one getting the advantage, and that's why you make the other person realize I am important. This is what you get as a result of applying the you attitude, and that is how it becomes important. However, avoid overuse of however as well. The manner in which I have used it, although it was rare, I don't use it quite often, but I don't know, I'm not noticing, I'm not concentrating on whether I'm using it or not. My focus remains on the delivering of the lecture. But you have to avoid the overuse of the word however, because If you are saying this, however, time and again alongside each and every statement, that means that your listener would realize, or your viewer would realize, that the other point, the point which is said after however, is not on our side, is the negative aspect which is there within each statement, which means that overall this person is not on our side, not credible, not authentic, not being sincere to us, because alongside each positive he always says this, however, this thing has to be done within the given provided deadline. So that's why wherever essential, wherever needed, do use it, but use it appropriately. That's why this clarity, completeness, conciseness, all the C's have been developed and have to be applied together. Again, for this stepping into the shoes of others to develop consideration requires that you understand audience desire, expectations, ideas, emotions, attitude, probable reaction. This is also very important, that in addition to all the points, you should also learn to anticipate what could be the expected reaction once I share this information. And by imagining, by anticipating, by predicting that reaction, try to come up with an alternative after that statement which you have given, which could have arisen that reaction. Provide a statement which could calm them down in case of a strong reaction which is possible as a result of the information being shared, if it's really essential to be shared. Otherwise, you know how to convey information based on the examples we have discussed and the examples which are following ahead. Now, you will simply say, earlier sir was saying to use or to apply you attitude. Now the point is coming, avoid you attitude, but just read the statement in detail. Avoiding you attitude in a negative situation, that you have to see whether the situation is right to be used or wrong. As I had this example of using the active voice in a positive situation and using the passive voice in case of a negative situation, because that could have a very big impact if you are using active for a negative situation, because you will be held responsible, because you are placing yourself. And it's our own nature as well that we look at the very first word within a sentence to just realize who is the addressor and what do they have to talk about. This is our nature. You'll gradually understand this, that this thing happens naturally, and that's why these constructions have been developed. So based on this, you have to avoid the you attitude in a negative situation, because right after this view, if you are saying that you failed to submit the report within the provided deadline, it could have a very big impact, because your reader or receiver would say, I am being held responsible for everything, or do I have to own every bad thing because of this you attitude this thing has developed. So that is why you have to avoid this you attitude, especially in case of providing some negative information. Now, this is also a way of congratulating. I want to send my congratulations, highlighting you and yourself all the time, that you are the one who is congratulating. Rather than this, or turning it into a first person, I am just the one who is congratulating. Rather than congratulations to you for everything which you have done, for scoring good marks, for getting married, for getting a good job, for anything. Focus on you, especially for a positive situation. In case of negative, don't focus on them. Rather, the subject itself requires the explanation. No need to give blame to anyone, not to yourself, not to that person. You need to apply the principles of integrity and ethics. Integrity, you need to be honest. You need to make sure that things provided are authentic, credible, once again linking it with the C of correctness. So that's how you need to be honest, be sincere with your readers, and that is how you're basically considering and giving them a space. And ethics, of course, you need to use your moral sense. You should use that sense of differentiating right from wrong, calling right what is right and calling it wrong what is actually wrong, because after all, and this is going to have an impact, because your information might be forwarded to so many readers, and that is why if it's correct at the first place, it's going to have a good impact. Otherwise it may turn out to be a negative chain reaction which has a very lethal kind of outcome in the long run. So that's why maintain these principles of integrity and ethics. Benefits must meet the recipient's needs, address their concerns, and offer them reward. That is how you develop consideration as well, because in the long run you're basically providing them a picture of that this is going to be the reward of the information being provided to you. That is the action which is required to be performed. This is something which you will get as a result of it. So tell them that this is to meet your needs, and that is how your issues are being addressed, and as a result of this, that is what you will get out of it. So focus on needs, concerns, and rewards should be the focus to develop consideration within your writing. Another point to focus on is understanding professional knowledge, level of education, age, and interest of your audience. It's more or less related to the nature of the audience basically, and all these are basic aspects that you need to ensure are there. You are well aware of it, and that is how you have structured it. You are aware of their knowledge, level of education, age, how much extent they are mature enough, and of course their interest. If it's the subject is of their interest, they'll go with you. If it's something new, then you will have to arrange it in a manner to make it interesting and to develop their interest. That is how you need and you require a very interesting and a very smart use of these C's of communication, which is the next level. But for now, basically, we are moving towards understanding these C's of communication. Again, it's important to relate to the target group and be involved. You just don't have to stand on stage and then addressing everyone, but you have to become part of that mass, involve them within this meaning making process, make them realize that you are one of them, you are part of the same team, and you have to do this together. And that is how you basically show them that we are together, and I consider each and every one of you. The information is also being provided by considering your concerns, and that is how you have to make yourself part of the target group. Standing alone won't help you. Do not try to become someone who is other than everyone whom you are addressing. This distance is again going to affect this communication, two-way communication taking place between you and your readers. Involve yourself, become a single unit, and then convey things to them. It will be more effective. Avoiding the use of unpleasant words, again related to other C's. It is impossible to open an account for you today is not an example to be shared, is not an example of consideration, meaning that this thing is basically wrong. When you travel on your company expense, you will not receive approval for the first class fare. So this use of you will not receive or it is impossible, this is the reason I have made them bold, that these are the things which are totally going against the basic concept of consideration. You have to consider, and the reason why just examples are there is that points have been explained. Rather than the impossibility, focus on the possibility. Just tell them the alternative which is possible. And in case of you will not receive when you travel on company expense, so give them the alternative that how can I receive the approval for the first class fare. That is how you are basically considering their expectations and the audience themselves. Now looking at the example, I call it bad example because we are going to figure it out. Dear Mr. Sadan, I am sorry. that we are presently out of stock of black handbags and we will be unable to fill your order at this time. An order has been placed with the manufacturer. You will receive shipment after 10 days. I trust this delay will not inconvenience you. But the point is, at the very beginning, it is seen within some information. You have used so many wrong, so many negative expressions that the other person won't be interested to read what's coming ahead. So rather, Mr. Mudassir is now smart enough to simply restructure the information into, for Mr. Sadan, thank you for ordering a black handbag. The color you choose proved to be very popular and we quickly sold all we had in stock. However, we have placed a rush order for more and are promised delivery within 10 days. Yours will be shipped the same day our new supply arrives. I know you'll be delighted with the unique carry-on bag. It's not only very handsome but incredibly inexpensive. Highlighting the qualities, ensuring this thing is delivered and ensuring that it will be given to us, and the day it's given to us, you will simply dispatch it to be received by Mr. Sadan. That is how you can structure it. You are considering the need of the other person and you have structured it accordingly and keeping it very positive by the very first thank you note. Now this thank you note can have such a big difference within your communication. That is how communicate with everyone, be it your teachers, your professionals, your boss, your colleagues, but that is how you need to ensure how to communicate, how to begin. Do not just take a start in a negative way. It won't help you in the long run. It will develop a very negative image of you in future and for your readers. Start with a very good note. Now look at these expressions. You will be, or customers will be able to do transactions after office hours at the teller counter till 5 p.m. Now over here they are placing a line, which is why this emoticon of sadness is there by looking at the statement itself. But to make it a happy one, we are happy to announce that transaction can be made even after 3 till 5 at the teller counter. So over here the structure, the meaning is the same, but the structure itself has highlighted that this is the time in which this thing can be done, and that is why we want to simply share this good news with you that this thing is possible. Again, focus on the possibility rather than the impossible. That is something which requires some exercise, but I am sure we will be able to develop it together. It is not possible for us to extend locker facility to you since you do not have a fixed term deposit in our bank. The other person will be as sad, even sad, more sad than this one. Extending the locker facility will be attended to you as soon as we receive an investment in fixed term deposit from you. So it will be attended. It is possible. Now that is the focus which has been highlighted. Now this example is also very beautiful, very brief, very concise, but rather than calling the other person using the you attitude in a negative way, you are wrong, it will be like as sad as he or she is. The other person who is like your addressee, but our perceptions appear to be different is a very nice way of conveying the same thing to the other person, that you probably may be wrong because our perceptions appear to be different. So this thing would convey the same thing to the other person, but it won't hurt emotions, it won't hurt feelings, it won't hurt their self-respect, and that has to be ensured in case of consideration. So there would be many occasions in which you have to say that you're wrong, but try to apply this technique of saying our perceptions appear to be different. Maybe we can work this out in another way. Let's try it. And then start your discussion for further explanation rather than just simply saying to the person, you're wrong. The car left by you for service cannot be delivered before the end of the month. Now this is also a kind of sentence statement that you hear around you in the surroundings, but it has to be replaced. It can be taught. If you learn it today, you can teach it to so many others. The car given to us for service will be delivered after thorough service by the end of the month. So cannot be delivered can be simply replaced with will be delivered after that. That condition which is creating that negative sense can come at the end. And that is why you can simply place this negative aspect in a new way but at the end and focus on the positive. With this, I conclude the 6th C of communication, of consideration, and move you towards the last but never the least, which is courtesy. The respect, the element of respect that you give to your readers. Very important C of communication, and it can be developed within your writing as well, as you will see that it's directly linked with all the other C's of communication, talking about just direct connection. It's all about giving space to the audience. You have to involve them actively within the interpretation and meaning making process. You have to involve them, and talking about its link, it's connected with the principle of correctness. Of course, if you are providing the correct information, it will be correct if you have considered what their expectations are, and that is how you are giving space to the audience, and that's how you are ensuring courtesy. Providing concrete information, of course, would be giving specifics based on their nature, based on their background knowledge. So again, you are considering them, giving them the space, and then providing the information so that they can understand. Again, you are developing courtesy. So that is how it's linked with these C's of communication. This gives you a good picture of comprehension, that you are understanding others' feelings along with perspective. It's not just the outlook, you focus on their feelings as well, and you try to make sure that these are met, these are not hurt, everything, they are given the space which they deserve in the meaning making process, and that is how they will involve with you in the overall understanding, in that action which has to be performed, but ensure that you are developing courtesy within your content. How can you do it? You basically provide the respect through your writing, and you try to be polite. Politeness itself is a very complex phenomenon, because linguists are carrying out research. They simply study human by looking at their positive face and negative face. Positive face meaning the one which is simply the face which is there in front of the audience, the one which is used to simply assemble everyone together to perform a teamwork, a task which has to perform together. Negative face is the one which is hidden, and which is the one which has some reservations, but it is not brought into the forefront to damage the relationship between a working environment. So these are the two faces, and they come under this line, under this concept of politeness. You apply these politeness strategies by keeping this negative face behind and this positive face in the forefront, which is basically used to strengthen the relationship. So you basically try to be polite, then in addition to this you try to be judicious, showing very sound judgment, and you try to be reflective as well. Wherever there has to be a sharing of knowledge, it has to be done based on the nature of your audience. You try to reflect your own perspectives as well, but it has to be done based on the given terms and condition and the limitations as per the content being shared with your audience. Giving space to the audience would of course mean you are providing that specific background for the general public if it is needed, and of course in case of the general public it would be needed because they require details. Then it would become specific in case of co-workers, because they are no longer the general public, but they are the ones who know almost the same as you are, because you all are working together within the same environment. That is how they will be looking for the specific details. Then you providing societal benefits, what would be the overall outcome and how the audience is going to get the benefit from all of it. And you basically It requires your own understanding of the background knowledge of the audience. So you basically understand the background knowledge of the audience, and based on this comprehension, you'd be in a position to structure your content accordingly without any issues. Positive and focused towards audience. Again, this positive language is self-explanatory. It shouldn't be that much confusing. One way or another, your information has to remain focused towards your audience. If it is related to them, they'll be interested to read. If it's just related to you or about you, they'll lose their interest. You have to involve them, as I mentioned earlier, giving them the proper space which they deserve, and they will get the space provided the subject matter is one way or another related to them and will be providing benefit to them in the long run. That is how you develop courtesy, as we will see in the examples as well. What you have to do is you have to be open, you have to be friendly, you have to be honest, integrity, and empathetic. Empathetic means you have to go to the next level of sympathy, because sympathy is something in which you cannot experience the feelings of that person because you are not in the same state. Of course, it's a very tough task, because if you have not gone through a tragedy, you won't be able to understand the tragedy of the other person, because that is how you are able to empathize with the other person, if you have experienced the same thing which that other person has experienced. Otherwise, it would be just sympathy. Empathy demands that same feeling, that state of mind, that heart in which the other person is, be it a sad situation. So you have to go into that situation, or just try to go into that situation by, of course, stepping into the shoes of the other person by using that C of communication, consideration, and through that you will develop this C of courtesy as well. So of course, becomes and looks tough, but possible with practice and exercise. Again, for courtesy or giving space to the audience, you can give space based on the application of your attitude, and has to be used based on the principles as discussed. Positive situation, do not blame them for a negative situation, do not overuse it. A normal or an average use as per needed is the one which you can use for developing a strong relationship with your audience. Being thoughtful and appreciative, of course, if you are appreciating and trying to be thoughtful, you're giving them space for understanding the concept being provided. Using non-discriminatory expressions. Non-discriminatory means the expressions which are more generic, which can be used for all kinds of people, because although we know we have class distinction and there are so many classes, but the purpose here of writing is to involve them, everyone, as a single unit. If you want your organization to prosper, you have to make them as a single unit. You have to make them work as a team. Of course, they would have their different functions, but they still have to consider themselves as one and the same, part of a single crew. So that is how you can use these terms, such as employees, in case of an academic environment, students, and you have to avoid these annoying expressions such as delinquent, you fail to, contrary to your interference, such expressions which are coming at the beginning, inexcusable, nonsense. Well, these are the expressions which are going to really harm the overall relationship between you and your audience, and that is why these are required to be avoided by all means, especially for giving the courtesy which they deserve. You need to omit expressions that hurt, irritate, or insult or humiliate your audience, because these are certain expressions which are at times used when the person is not aware of these C's of communication. And that is how their overall progress of an organization, of a company, or an office itself in general gets affected, because the relationship themselves are not that strong. The employees, the fellows, they're not sincere with one another. But this communication itself is like the first step of having a strong tie. You get together by this communication, and that is why you need to ensure that this is very effective, and that is why these C's are very much important. So never try to use, as you don't use in case of your oral communication as well, such expression which may hurt, irritate or insult. If you are expected to grant apologies, do it graciously. Don't try to keep reservations with anyone, and that shouldn't be reflected within your writing as well by coming up with these negative indirect expressions. You are aware of these expressions in which you are saying one thing meaning another. These are required to be avoided as well. Very much needed. Then still try to say things indirectly as you have learned through these C's, but still try to strengthen your bonds, your relationship with your fellows, which will help you in the long run. This point is also very important regarding the use of titles as observed in so many occasions. We do it at times casually, spontaneously, by mistake, unconsciously, but if two persons are to be addressed, one lady and a gentleman, so sometimes the name of a person is just taken, the male basically is taken without a title. For example, Miss Saima and Anmol sitting together in the office. Miss Saima and Anmol sitting together in the office will be shifted to the next room. In a general statement, if it's oral, still to a good extent it looks a bit strange, calling Saima, Miss Saima and Anmol as Anmol. But rather, in case of written, ensure to use the title Miss Saima and Mr. Anmol sitting in room number 1 will be shifted to room number 3 or 4 whatsoever, and so on and so forth. But the purpose is ensure to use titles. These are meant for giving courtesy, respect, considering the audience, their level, everything. But of course, the most important, courtesy. That's why these titles are very much important and have to be used. Making it tactful, thoughtful, appreciative. How can you do it? Stupid letter, I can't understand any of it. Clearly you did not read my latest facts. So you're going to have such a face as you see on the right hand side, because the language itself is very abusive, very negative. It will harm that person for whom this thing has been written or to whom it's spoken. A very good way of saying this, it's my understanding that there is a need of some improvement, or sometimes my wording is not precise. Let me try it again. Rather than you did not understand any of what I have just said, even the manner in which I have just said it, it would have looked quite negative to you. So that is how you can just restructure things, and this restructuring is going to change the overall tone all of a sudden from negative to very positive. Of course, requires practice. Now looking at the example, an interesting example. Hey man, what's this I hear about the good news? You sure pulled a fast one this past weekend and then didn't tell any of us about it. Give my regards to the little lady and wish her the best, she'll need it. So hopefully some of you may be getting the idea of what this is about, but overall it is missing this C of courtesy. So rather than just this indirect expression of mocking the other person or ridiculing the other person, better to give them respect in writing by starting with this felicitation. Warm congratulations on your wedding. Well, you certainly took us by surprise. So the meaning has been conveyed to the other person that you didn't tell us. In fact, just a few of us even suspected you were taking off to get married. But even though we did not hear about it, we wish you the best. Okay, we didn't hear about it, you took us by surprise. We were expecting that you may tell us, but overall it's okay. We wish you all the best. Give our warm regards to your new partner. The other person will get the message and will realize the mistake as well. All it depends on the choice of words which you have made, and these choice really has a big difference if you look at it in the long run. Just look at the newspapers as well, the manner in which the leaders of different nations interact when they have to give a message. Just look at the choice of words they make, which becomes the headlines of these newspapers as well. You will get an idea how they are representing their states, their nation, their country, and you'll get an idea how they maintain courtesy while conveying a strong message if they have to. What did I mean by non-discriminatory expressions when I talked about it? The ones which are providing an equal treatment to people regardless of gender, race, ethnic origin and physical features. So it all begins with, rather than using a freshman, new student, entering student, instead of manpower, workers, employees, rather than man-made, you can say constructed, manufactured or built, and in case of a chairman, chairperson or chair. A bad example would give you an idea of how you can maintain courtesy within your content. Mr. Muzammil is talking to Mr. Ali regarding an issue. I really do not appreciate how your IT team ignores the request of my team alone. My team is an important function in this organization. We have our own IT requirement. Can you ensure that your team responds promptly to my team's request hereon? Very strong message in a negative manner. Therefore, Mr. Muzammil, I believe you require the application of courtesy within your writing, and once Mr. Muzammil did this, that is how he restructured his writing. Hi, Mr. Ali. I understand that the IT team is swamped with work and gets requests from every department in the organization. My team, however, is working on a high priority project, and I would greatly appreciate if you ask your team members to respond to my team's queries promptly and help us complete this project on time. Please do let me know if you need anything from me. Regards. Thank you, Mr. Muzammil. That is how you can simply restructure your writing by applying this C of courtesy, and that is going to make a big difference, because in the previous example, I don't think Mr. Ali would have given any heed to what Zamil just said. He would have said, no, look at the manner he's talking to me, I'm not paying any heed to it. But this use of courtesy within the language would have made him realize it's my mistake and I have to do something about it. So this is basically how you can apply courtesy. This brings us to the end of the 7 C's of effective communication. Hopefully, and I believe that these 7 C's are going to help you a lot in your professional life, in your academic life. Just start giving them a practice. Now when you start writing, in addition to this writing process that you go through, just keep in mind these C's, the manner in which these are used, the manner in which these can be applied to make your writing effective, and I'm sure it is going to make a big difference in the overall communication that you are doing with your audience, with your readers, with your viewers. So I'll be very happy as well to see your feedback once you have started applying the 7 C's of communication.
I know you all are excited to learn the rest of the 4 C's by now. So far you have covered first 3 C's that are clarity, conciseness and completeness. Let's discuss the remaining 4 C's. Number 1, concreteness, which means be specific while interpreting facts and figures. Number 2, correctness, which is considering factual and grammatical precision. Number 3, consideration, which means stepping into the shoes of others. And number 4 is courtesy. By that, we mean giving space to the audience. Let's discuss them in detail. Concreteness is the 4th C of communication. It is interconnected with clarity, conciseness, and consideration. Interpret the given facts and figures. Avoid vague use of words, particularly words with multiple meanings, such as several, multiple, quickly. It also includes citation of the sources. Use donative words rather than connotative words. Also prefer action words over noun. The 5th C is correctness, which means being precise in your writing while interpreting facts and figures. This C is interconnected with consideration. By concreteness, we mean that there is no room for grammatical errors. The message shall be correct and well timed when conveyed. The information cited has to be taken from valid, reliable, and credible sources. 6C of communication is consideration. That means you need to consider audience expectations. This C is interconnected with the principle of correctness. You can achieve this C by applying visual design and making use of good language. Furthermore, you make the content comprehensible and appealing to the audience. The 7C of communication is courtesy. That means you need to give space to your audience. It is connected with the principle of concreteness and is all about understanding others' feelings along with perspectives. You can achieve this by being polite, judicious, and reflective in your writing. You must provide background for general public. Hopefully, your interactive skills have been sharpened to become a successful freelancer.
Just a quick review. This is the focus of our today's lecture, 7 C's, and we have successfully covered the rest of the 4 C's of concreteness, correctness, consideration, and courtesy. So with this, the 7 C's of communication come to an end, and in the next lecture we are going to start the next topic. Till then, it's goodbye and Assalamu alaikum from my side. Thank you.